All right, I'm here with the Tuff Torq K46 transaxle out of my lawnmower, and I'm tired of this thing burning up. I rebuilt it about 10 years ago, and it's slipping again. I mow for about a half an hour and it doesn't pull anymore. And a lot of what it is just the oil overheating while it's running. And so I came in here and I drilled a hole in the case and put this fitting in on the side. That's going to be my return line. I've got the cover here, and as you can see, I've got a fitting here with a 90-degree on it, and I've got this sensor here. This is a fan switch off of an 85 Camaro, I believe. That's what the guy at the parts store said. That's what it looked like it was going to work. TS 500, I believe, for the switch. SW 500 for the switch, and the pigtail, I don't remember what the part number is, but it's the, they sell the pigtail specifically for this. It's a funky type of connector, so you need the pigtail. I was trying to find one that had a spade connection, just a simple spade connection, but those are getting hard to find nowadays. So anyways, the temperature switch will be hooked to a relay. It'll ground the relay, so I'm going to have the relay somewhere on the mower, and the coil of the relay will be hot all the time, and so will the contacts. The ground side of the coil is going to come through this, and whenever the temperature gets over, I believe it's 195, this will close. It'll supply a ground for the relay, and then the contacts on the relay will close. And I'm going to have an old Holley fuel pumper. I think it's an MSD fuel pump actually. I'm going to have it mounted on the mower, and when the oil is at 195 degrees, it'll be thin enough to flow like fuel, and it's going to pump it out of here. This is going to be the lowest place on the transaxle. It's going to pump it out of here through this oil cooler. This is a oil cooler off of a Suburban. It comes out of the end tank of the radiator. I got the hoses, or the fittings for it. I'm going to trim those up to the right size, find a way to put a knurl on the end to hold the hoses in place with some clamps. And so it's going to pump the oil through that cooler and back in the top there, and hopefully reduce the temperature of my oil in my transaxle. We'll see how it goes. So you know how it is. You plan on doing something, and something else gets in the way, and 3 days later you end up finishing up your video on how to do something simple like put some gasket material on. Well, that's kind of where I'm at. It's a couple days later now. So I've got the K46 Tuff Torq hydrostatic drive modified. I've got my return line, and then on the front cover here, or the bottom cover here, I've got the feed line that the oil pump's going to feed to, or the actual fuel pump that's being used as an oil pump. And I've got the thermostatic fan switch all ready to go. When I lay my Puckey, I could lay it here on this pan, or I could lay it on here, and it would seal up fine. But you can see I've got some passages here I've got to seal up, and I don't know why they sealed the pump separately from the gears. I don't really care. It's a hydrostatic drive. I'm just going to put it back together and let it run. But I'm going to put the Puckey on this because it's easier to get in those little grooves and stuff. So now, as you can see here, my lawnmower is already back up in operation. I bought a hydrostatic drive off of eBay, I think it was, and it's a K57, not a 46. There's some minor differences. I haven't split the case open to see what the differences really are. Supposedly that has an actual pressure feed built into it. I don't know. I'll look and see what that entails, but I bought it for Husqvarna. Now, come to find out, the controls are different between how they're mounted on a John Deere and Husqvarna. This swash plate in the other transaxle, and the other hydrostatic drive, is flipped upside down. And that means if you install it in a John Deere, when you push forward, it goes in reverse. When you push reverse, it goes in forward. So I've got to pull that hydrostatic drive back out and correct it. I mowed the lawn yesterday, the day before yesterday, with pushing it in reverse all the time. And that's kind of a pain in the neck to do, but got the lawn mowed. Now that I'm getting this one back together, I can, pull that one back out, go through it, and flip the swash plate correctly, and hopefully I'll have this one running in the lawnmower with that one as a spare. So give me a second here to mount the camera and I'll start laying the puckey and show you how to do it. Now you can see I used the back side of my razor blade and cleaned out all these little divots here. The other thing, whenever you're laying puckey, you've got to make sure this is absolutely clean where you're putting new puckey on. Oh, I missed a spot right there. Well, dang it. But that's why you clean it. Now you can find the stuff you missed. All the passages are clean of oil now. It's going to stick. This has been sitting on the garage floor for a couple days, so I need to make sure all the grass bits and goo are out of it. Some of the bits of old puckey have gotten in here, and I really don't want that floating around in there. You know, there are some small passages in there and some tight clearances, and if I get a little bit of schmoo in there, it may cause problems, or you know, the steel may just overcome it. I don't know which, but I'd rather not take that chance and find out and have to tear it all back apart again. So give me a minute to clean out that last bit right there, and I'll do the puckey in, actual puckey in. Well, here I was showing you how to do this and talking all kinds of tips and tricks, and come to find out the camera wasn't filming. So as you can see here, I'm about halfway done already. Main thing, you know, don't be crazy with the puckey. You want it to be in all the right places and not too thick. Some guys use the big caulk guns to lay their puckey. I tend to use these little bottles because I don't go through the big tubes of silicone that fast. This is normally the size you'd buy in a auto parts store anyways. They have them on the shelf in these packets. I normally like using gray RTV on stuff like this, but I don't have any. I ran out, and I've got a bunch of orange RTVs, so that's what I'm using today. And honestly, that section in there that I didn't have fully cleaned out, if it had been orange RTV instead of gray, I'd have seen it and I'd have cleaned it out. But orange RTV is just as effective for this. If it's an oil pan or something that's got a little, like a stamped steel oil pan, and it's something that may flex a bit and you want a little bit better sealing for oil, the black RTV works really good. If you're doing an exhaust gasket, the copper RTV is amazing for helping seal exhaust gaskets. Well, the side over here is already starting to skin over and dry. So one of the things I was talking about a minute ago when the camera wasn't filming was about the skinning over of RTV. Some guys say, you've got to, or the engineers like to say, you've got to wait 10 minutes before you can put the part on to let the RTV skim over so you get a better seal. And I've never, back when I was a technician back in the late 90s, we never had the time to wait for it to skin over. You were, sealing it back up to move on to your next job. And so we would just throw the puckey on and bolt it back in place with the puckey still fresh and wet, and we never had an issue with it. So, the engineers like to say, you need to do this, and I'm not going to knock the engineers for that. They are trying to do what's best, but sometimes what's best isn't what's practical. Get a little bit more puckey there to smear around that bolt hole. It's a little thin, but there we go. And that part is ready to put on. So, clean off my finger real quick here. I should probably wear a glove when I'm dealing with that silicone. 30 years of being a mechanic and laying silicone is probably going to make my kids all be born naked. Okay, so looking at it, it goes on this way. You want to put it on once and be done. Make sure that is seated all the way. There's a bearing in here. If you don't get it right, you can't get this all the way down. You'll break the case. Make sure you get that bearing right and you get that seated all the way down, and that swash plate over where it needs to be. Okay, and something's not fitting. What is not fitting? Oh, I need to put that in. Woo. There it goes. Alright, so when I tighten up my bolts, I want to go from the middle out. I'm missing a bolt. So, I have a K57 apart now, and flipping that piece over is a lot more entailed than you would think. The biggest part of this job is cleaning up the case and reassembling it. A couple things. The little magnet here, I pulled it out, and this is a brand new hydrostatic drive. Installed it just a couple days ago, mowed the lawn once, and it had filings all over it. So there is a fair amount of that kind of stuff in the break-in period. So just, something kind of gee whiz. But anyways, I was getting ready to, reassemble this and put the silicone on it, and I realized all these little bolt holes are full of oil, and whenever I go to put bolts in them, it's going to have oil run out onto the fresh silicone. So before I even get started, I'm going to run a bolt down through all these holes to push all that oil out so I'll get a clean silicone mating surface. And if you don't do this and you have oil all in there, you put your silicone in there, you're going to have a leak. And have discovered the K57 is a fair bit more complicated than the K46. Hoping I get all these parts right back in the right place. Be especially aware there's a little pin that goes inside this your input shaft, and I've got that pin set aside so I can make sure I can get it in there. I almost lost it. So the little pin I was pointing out goes right here, and that is the pin that holds your pump in place. So I went to put it back together, and I realized I have no idea which direction this stuff goes. Well, if you can see, there's kind of a smile face there, and I looked at somebody else's video online and discovered that basically you want the smiley face on this opposite the smile on that, which means it goes on oriented like this. If I can get it to slide in place. Awful fidgety. There we go. It's all the way down. You notice the gears are here. The hydrostatic pump is, or the pumps are down here, and so you're looking at the smiley face like this. So if you have a K57A and you take this part apart, and or it falls apart when you take it apart and you can't remember how it goes on, that's how. So I'm just about ready. I've just got to put some silicone on this case and put it back together, and I'll put the K57 back in the lawnmower. Alright, so it's a few weeks later now, and I figured I'd show you the last little bit on this K57 upgrade from the K46 hydrostatic drive. So when I got the K57 in, it's from a Husqvarna. The swash plate was upside down. I flipped that over so it goes forward and reverse like it's supposed to now. And there's talk about there being adjustments on the control rod that controls the hydrostatic drive here to I was going to try to work the pedal, but it's a little stiff to work by hand. But there's discussion about adjusting the rods that move this arm here for your forward and back. So if you're going slower in forward and faster in reverse, you just adjust those rods. Well, on the John Deere L130, there's no adjustment. The rods pin in place with the little spring pins. And this piece here is a nice rounded, it's supposed to be rounded all the way around. You can see here that I've cut this angle here. That allows me to get further throw on my gas pedal so I can actually go full speed and forward. And it's pretty quick in reverse too. So that's the final little bit on installing a K57. Have a good day.